Tips Analysis.
I hope you're feeling positive because this is the Introverted Positron, and welcome back to Tips Analysis. Today I'm going to be talking about something I wasn't really expecting to talk about at all, but it popped up out of nowhere. So I was actually planning on talking about something else this week. I know that video's coming out a day late for a variety of reasons, both in my personal life and just in the gaming atmosphere. But this week we had an interesting announcement from Nintendo, so I wanted to talk about it because it's interesting, and I want to go over how it could, how not only is it an interesting idea, but how it might actually start coming more into like our everyday games, and that's Nintendo Labo. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, I'll put like screenshot or something over there, but what Nintendo Labo is essentially a game basically that comes with packages of cardboard prints, which you can basically turn into many different things, such as a piano, a fishing rod, a robot seat, which was a more interesting one. And yeah, so these cutouts can be formed to make these things, and you can put the Joy-Cons in it and the gamepad in somewhere, and basically it acts as an interface for some kind of game, and it's cool, actually. It's very cool in that way. And it's interesting, and people are making fun of it, which is fair. There's some funny things to talk about in regards to just like using cardboard and stuff, although it's probably going to be a harder form of cardboard. And don't quote me on this, but I was hearing that apparently it's mostly the game that's the cost of the packages, and then it's like you can actually get free printouts and stuff. But still, it's a very cool idea. It's not something that's specifically for me, for instance. There are some adults who enjoy it, but it's mostly directed towards kids who will enjoy building these things like they do with stuff like Lego and other building like things. Obviously, Lego's the first thing that comes to mind. But it just gives them an opportunity to be more creative with the product, and then to also use it as the finishing to it, which is kind of cool. So they get an opportunity to do things like color and build it up, and then play with the game that's associated with it, and that's really cool, and it's cool to do with your kid if you have kids. So yeah, I could definitely see the target audience for this, and I think it's very smart, especially since a lot of parents are going to have Switches, and now they can use those Switches with their kids, and also some parents might get their kids Switches if they're not as likely if they're younger, just because it's a more fragile piece of technology than perhaps younger kids are able to play with. But still, definitely not something that I could see happening. And yeah, so it's just such an interesting project, and something I wasn't expecting at all, which is kind of the best part of it. But it's also kind of cool that they're actually using the technology in the Switch. And I've talked about this before, how one of the things I didn't like about the Wii specifically, was that it didn't really use its motion technology enough. But this is a justification for some of the technology that's in the Joy-Cons, and a very interesting way of using it. Because as we know from the Joy-Cons, they have like that HD Rumble feature, which is kind of used, although apparently like Mario Odyssey was designed somewhat around it, although it was kind of used just a little bit. And just like a bunch of other things, including an IR sensor. And apparently that IR sensor is actually being used to detect things. So when we went to the back to the Nintendo Switch like reveal, we were basically told that this IR sensor was very good at recognizing certain things. So for instance, it could tell if you're playing a rock, paper, scissors game, if you're doing rock, paper, or scissors. And that could be unfortunate. But yeah, and those are like, and that's kind of cool, but it's like, what do they use that for? And they're using it for this. So it's like it can recognize when things are moved in front of it and to what height and stuff like that. So apparently that's how it recognizes. For instance, there's a piano version, a piano build for Labo, and apparently it does that by seeing like how high the key raises or something like that. I don't know. It might also recognize distance and stuff like that. But either way, it uses the IR sensor to actually do this, and that's a pretty cool detail to use. It's good to see the technology used, but it also brings out other questions in regards to this, because it's a cool thing for kids. Kids are going to love it. So are some adults. Not me specifically. I just never really enjoyed those kinds of things myself. Not so much. Like I've enjoyed some other creative tasks, but I never enjoyed like Lego to a huge extent. I just like played with it a little bit as a kid. It wasn't a huge thing. I was more into like drawing and stuff, and obviously video games as time went on. But yeah, it's great. It's a great way to have kids just be creative and to enjoy that. But the question I have in regards to it is, how is this going to actually change the gaming style for the Switch? So we talk about Labo and how it comes with the specific game and everything, but I wonder if Nintendo is going to expand this further and to actually have like Labo sets for more mainstream games, for stuff that kids can buy into and then can enjoy games in different ways than perhaps some of the adults do. And that could be cool. I don't know if they're going to do it, just because the whole point of this is that this is more of games designed for kids than anything else, so it wouldn't make as much sense. But still, I could see them doing stuff like this where they give you sets of things for the Joy-Cons more often, kind of like the Wii had, but a little bit different with like the IR sensor and stuff, where you could actually use it to create different ways to play games that we play every day as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all develops. But Labo in and of itself is a very, very smart move. Very interesting, very interesting application of the Switch's technology, and I think that it's going to do quite well with the audience that it's directed at, especially since it's going to probably help some parents to get the Switch. So it's also a great way to help to sell the system to an extent. Obviously, I think it's more designed for people who already have the system and want to have a way to use it with their kids. But overall, I think it might help to sell Switches as well, because it means that not only do parents get to enjoy their system, but they have a way to enjoy it with their kids as well. And that's a good selling point for parents, especially since it has a good balance of being good for the gamer in general, as a console that you can take around with you, that you can play games on, that has a very wide variety of games that are meant for widely different audiences, and also just a way to play with your kids too. So having that second option, it giving you another way to play, which is basically the Switch's whole motif, is that it just gives you different ways to play with games and different ways to play with others and stuff like that. It's a good move. I think it goes very well with the Switch. I think it goes very well with everything else, and I wonder if it's going to start being incorporated more into everything else. That we're going to have like a Labo set for like Smash Bros or something. Although that's probably a bad example. Mario Kart, no, because then you already have the steering wheel. I don't know, something down the line. Mario Tennis. I can see Mario Tennis. Them having like a special like tennis racket and stuff that's actually set up to be a little bit different. Maybe not. No. I'm reading too much into it. But either way, I could definitely see them trying to incorporate this into other games, or creating more complex games for people with rather than the Labo stuff, but having more of the like RR use and giving us an interesting way to actually play something. I actually find it really weird that this kind of makes me think the most of VR, so it feels a lot like the Switch is set up for VR with stuff like this. So I wonder about that sometimes. And it's going to be interesting to see if that is something that pops up at some point. The Switch itself, it feels very much like it could be. I think, from what I understand about VR, I think the resolution on the Switch is a little too low for it. But still, it would be it could be done. But it's just seeing stuff like this, like the robot and stuff, it feels very much like the Switch could be used for VR, especially since its motion technology is much more accurate than the Wii. Has those IR sensors, which can be used to do different things. So for instance, if you have like the left Joy-Con in front of you, you could like do a grabbing motion towards something and it should be able to recognize something. So you could actually use it for stuff like that, which is kind of cool, and you wouldn't even need a second Joy-Con. Yeah, so it's stuff like that that makes me wonder about what Nintendo's doing with that technology. It definitely feels almost like it's geared towards VR, and like it's geared towards what we're doing now with the Labo, which is super cool, but not something I'm interested in myself. So yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting to watch this, to watch people's reactions to it, and I'm curious to see how it's going to do with the audience that it's directed towards. It could very well be a blunder for all we know, but I kind of suspect it isn't. Anyway, on that note, I think that's all that I really need to talk about it, but I think it's a cool topic. Next week, I have a really cool topic that I wanted to talk about for a couple weeks now. Also wanted to save it so I have more time to do editing for it. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps with the channel, and it's always appreciated. I'm going to leave some links here so you can go check out some other stuff on my channel, or you can always just search the channel. There's lots of stuff for people, playlists, and all that stuff. And so on that note, thank you again. Have a great day, and remember to keep positive.